Welcome back, everybody. This is the Brian Gould Show. We are live here in Sarasota, Florida, and we have a very, very, very special guest on with us right now, Mr. Pete Rose. Hello, Mr. Rose. How are you doing today?
Brian, I'm doing good today. It's a pleasure to talk to you. It's a pleasure to be on your show for all the fans in the Sarasota area. Where we as Cincinnati Reds spend a lot of time in that area down, Clearwater, Tampa, Sarasota, Bradenton, Plant City. I did a lot of spring training down there. There's a lot of great fans down there.
A lot of great fans. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show today. You won a World Series with the Reds in '75 and then with the Phillies in '80. Which city do you think had the better fans?
Well, Philly had more fans. Yeah, you got to remember, Brian, when you asked me that question, I was born in Cincinnati.
Right.
So I kind of played from my hometown. So I will always say the Cincinnati fans were my favorite fans. Although my 5 years I played in Philly, we went to 2 World Series, 80 and 83. I really enjoyed my 5 years there. We also won the World Series in Cincinnati in '76. We also lost the World Series in Cincinnati in 1970 and 1972. And we also lost the playoffs to the Mets in 1973. So I had a lot of postseason play with the Cincinnati Reds that happened to be my hometown. So, I enjoyed myself more in Cincinnati than I did Philadelphia. However, I had a good time when I went to Philadelphia. Every free agent should go to a town like Philadelphia. I know the fans get a bad rap there because I look at it like this, Brian. Fans in Philly want you to do 2 things. They want you to play hard and they want you to win. And I can say nothing bad about fans who want that.
Absolutely. No, I strongly agree. Philly fans always do get a bad rap. Some of my friends are Philly fans, and they're diehard, they're loyal, and and
they're knowledgeable. They're knowledgeable too. They're like New York fans. See, whenever you have a fan base, Brian, and you have a lot more media than other cities. What I mean by that, a lot more papers, a lot more radio stations, a lot more TV stations. You're going to be advised more about what's going on with your team than cities that don't have as much. And that's why most of those fans in New York and Philadelphia and L.A. and Boston, that's why they're pretty educated sports fans, because of the amount of media they have in the town.
I'm a Detroit guy, raised in Michigan. Yeah. And you had Sparky Anderson as your skipper. What was it like to play for Sparky? I was a big Sparky Anderson fan.
Sparky was the best. Sparky was the best. I played for 12 managers. There's no question in my mind that Sparky was the best, and I played for a lot of good managers. But I always rate managers by W's and L's, and Sparky won the most games. Sparky was the most street-smart guy I've ever met in my life. Sparky's philosophy was this. Think about this. Tell your listeners to think about this. There's 3 ways you can treat a person. You can pat him on the butt, you can kick him in the butt, or you leave him alone. You got 25 different guys on your team, 25 different egos you're handling under one set of rules. And Sparky was the best at that, because you have to know how to handle your people, because you're asking them to go to war for you every night. Who wants the ball bases loaded 1 out? You need a strikeout. Who wants to go to bat with bases loaded 2 outs, bottom of the 9th, tie score, the 7th game of the World Series? Some players thrive on that. Other players don't want that. And as a manager, you have to know your personnel. And Sparky knew his personnel both in Cincinnati and in Detroit.
And you're right. Growing up watching him, I mean, I'm a little younger, and when I watched him, especially right after, we were calling it the Roar of '84, and just tearing off after that, even in the down seasons towards the end of his career in Detroit, he always just knew how to handle players and how to handle situations, and it seemed like he always knew how to discuss even the rough times with the media. Like he was very, very intelligent with how he was handling situations.
I said, he was so street smart. He was like me. He wasn't book smart, but he was street smart toward people and street smart toward baseball, and he could relay that to people that he talked to. He was comfortable to talk to. He cooperated with everybody, and he could be tough at times, which you have to be. But he he wouldn't be tough just to be tough to a reporter. He'd give you your space. He'd give you your time. You ask the right questions. He'd give you your right answers. In other words, he was a great interview. He was a great interview, and he was great for a team. He was great in Detroit. And he was great in Cincinnati. And that's why he's in the Hall of Fame.
For those of you listening, this is legendary Pete Rose on with us today. Pete, who was your favorite pitcher to face? Was there anyone that you saw on occasion that you couldn't wait to get on the mound with?
Yeah, I don't think you ever have a favorite pitcher you want to face. I think you have pitchers that you'd rather pass on if you could.
Who was your toughest?
With me, that was Sandy Koufax. I couldn't have Sandy Koufax with your studio door. But he was really great. I mean, I was 10 for 57 off Sandy Koufax. That's 175. One of the best pitchers I ever faced was Juan Marichal. I hit 340 off him. Bob Gibson, the most competitive pitcher I ever faced. I hit 307 off him. Warren Spahn, for your old-time listeners, I hit 17 for 32 off of him, which is 580. So it's spurty. I mean, it's just, you can't say I don't want to face this guy or I'd rather face this guy, because you might pick a guy you think you can hit, go 0 for 4. Or you might think a guy you can't hit, you'll go 3 for 4. So you have to, whoever's on the schedule, that's the guy you got to face. You can't take off days against the tough pitchers. You got to play against all the pitchers.
Tony Gwynn, Ted Williams, and Wade Boggs have all said that they could see the stitches on the ball coming out of the pitcher's hand. Could you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, everybody in baseball can. I mean, those guys aren't something special that if you were a baseball, I could teach you in a half hour behind the studio to see the stitches on the ball.
Wow.
Brian, you have to see the stitches or you don't know what the hell the pitch is, because every pitch has a different rotation on the ball.
Right.
A curveball has a certain rotation. A slider does. A knuckleball has no rotation. A screwball has a backward rotation. A fastball just has a normal rotation. That's something that's blown out of contact, because I don't think there's a player in baseball that can't see the stitches on the ball. And what we're saying is when the guy throws a pitch, because of you're trained to see the stitches, you know what the pitch is. See, and another thing about hitting in the big leagues. First of all, most pitchers you're going to face, you know what they throw. Okay, I've often said that the easiest place in the world to hit is the big leagues, and I'll tell you why.
Wow.
Because everybody that plays in the big leagues has hand-eye coordination. I think you'll agree with that.
Yes.
You don't have hand-eye coordination and not make the big leagues. Okay. Now, when you get to the big leagues, the lights are better, the umpires are better, the pitcher's control is better, and maybe most importantly, you're facing the same guys year after year after year. They don't get better.
That makes sense. I never looked at it.
And I don't care who you are or where you're from or what color you are or how much money you got. Go to the Hall of Fame, you're going to make 7 out of 10 outs. So it's what you do with those 3 hits is what counts toward the team winning games.
I've never looked at it like that. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. No, that definitely does. And especially at that level, that does make sense.
Yeah, you might be a high school player or a college player, Brian, and you might see the guy on Monday, and you'll never see him again. And the first thing you know, you're 0 for 3 before you know what the hell he throws. Where when I faced Tom Seaver or Steve Carlton or Bob Gibson or Bill Negro, those guys, I knew what they were going to throw. I knew what they weren't going to throw. And you just have that battle to see who's going to get the hits or who's going to make the outs. Pretty simple.
Interesting. That all does make sense. Any players along your journey that never got the recognition that they should have, like an underrated player?
Yeah, sure, a lot of them, and we had some on our team. When you have a team with Sparky, and you got Bench, and you got Morgan, and you got me, Tony Perez didn't get his due. David Concepcion didn't get his due, because by the time they got to those 2 guys, the reporters were quoted out. And it might have something to do with the English situation. But Tony Perez was almost 1,700 RBIs. I mean, hitting behind Johnny Bench, which is a pretty tough position to hit in. You're going to knock in runs because Johnny didn't leave too many ducks on the pond. But there's a lot of players that are quiet and they don't want to talk to the press, and they get overlooked. Here's the way I look at it: whether it's a radio show, whether it's a magazine reporter or a newspaper reporter, they got a job to do, and the easiest way to make their job easy is to cooperate with them. Give them 5 minutes a day and go about your business. And if you cooperate with them, then they won't be hanging around your locker, hanging around outside your house, hanging around you at the batting cage, trying to get your quotes. So it's amazing when you cooperate with people at the ballpark, especially on the field, how everybody's day just goes by a lot smoother.
Well, speaking of talkers, were there any trash talkers in your dugout or on the opposing team that you?
No, we didn't have trash talkers. Trash talkers don't make it. We had agitators. Tony Perez was the biggest agitator in the world. So was Joe Morgan. But the agitation in the right way. We kept each other alive. And we made it fun to play the game. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the Big Red Machine was the best team in the history of baseball. But I'm going to tell you one thing. The Big Red Machine was the most entertaining team in the history of baseball. We're the only team to date, Brian, that had a Hall of Fame manager, a white Hall of Famer, a Latino Hall of Famer, and a black Hall of Famer. That would be Bench, Morgan, Perez, and Sparky.
Wow.
Okay? No other team has ever had that ingredient. And what about the other guys? Geronimo, Foster, Griffey, Concepcion. Those were all all-star players. Those were all all-star type players. So we had a complete team, and we had Gold Glovers, a center fielder Gold Glove, shortstop, second base, catcher. We had home run champions. We had RBI champions. We had batting champions. We had base stealing champions. We had everything. We had personality. That's why we had the most entertaining team in the history of baseball, I believe. And I don't think I'm wrong on that.
No, you covered it all. That's a really great and entertaining team, like you said.
Now someday, Jeter will make the Hall of Fame. Rivera will make the Hall of Fame. Torrey made the Hall of Fame. And if I was voting, Roger Clemens will make the Hall of Fame. So someday that ingredient will be with New York. But until that happens, the Reds are the only players that have the ingredient I just talked about.
The players that play today, would they have been able to make it in your time? Are they too soft now?
Sure.
Yeah?
Sure. They'd have made it in our time, just like we can make it in their time. Great players are great players. It don't matter when you're playing. I mean, that's like saying, would Babe Ruth make it today? You're damn right he would.
Yeah.
Would Gary make it today? Yeah. Would Stan Musial make it today? Absolutely. Would Roberto Clemente make it today? Absolutely. Would Mike Trout made it back in the 60s and 70s? Absolutely. Bryce Harper? Absolutely. Miguel Cabrera? He could make it any day. He's really a great hitter. So, there's some changes in baseball. I think the biggest change in baseball, and I could be wrong about this, but I don't want to say it hurts baseball, but it doesn't help baseball. It helps the players, is the multi-year contracts. See, we never had multi-year contracts. My first 16 years with the Cincinnati Reds, I had one-year contracts.
Wow,
What does that create, Brian? That creates, you got to do something in 68 to get a raise to play for 69. You got to do something in 72 to get paid in 73. Would I have rather had a $10 million a year salary for 5 or 8 years? Absolutely. But they didn't give them out in those days. Security is a big thing for an athlete. But when you don't have security of a long-term contract or even a multi-year contract, you have to produce. You don't want to miss games because you can't get a raise. You can't get statistics sitting in the dugout in street clothes or being on a disabled list. It just doesn't happen that way. Willie Mays never spent no time on a disabled list. Hank Aaron, neither. Yastrzemski, neither. Bench, myself, Morgan, we didn't spend time on a disabled list. And we had injuries. We weren't freaks, but we played with our injuries. I played 24 years, Brian, and not one player I ever played with or against had an MRI. And I don't remember any player that I played that had a concussion. And I don't remember any player except one that had Tommy John surgery. You know who it was?
Tommy John.
Tommy John?
Tommy John.
Yeah. Wow.
So that way, medically, baseball has changed. And it's changed because of what I just talked about, the contract. Because if you own a baseball team, Brian, and you got a really good pitcher like an Arrieta or a Kershaw or somebody like that, and you give them 8 years of $25 million a year, and the second year he gets a kink in his elbow, you're going to shut him down right away. Because if he has a situation where he throws when he shouldn't have and he can never throw again, you're obligated to that 7 more years of $25 million a year. Because baseball contracts are all guaranteed. They're not like football contracts or some of the basketball contracts. I've never met a baseball player that didn't have a guaranteed contract for the whole length of the contract. It's just like, remember Bobby Bonilla?
Yes.
Okay, for the Mets, he gets $1 million a year, I believe, until the year 2034.
It's something ridiculous like that. He's still getting paid.
Yeah, and he hasn't played for 4 or 5 years.
Right.
That's a guaranteed contract. That's a guy that couldn't play anymore. And just like right now, he's on his way to come back. But if Kershaw, his back injury, prevented him from playing baseball ever again, the Dodgers would owe him $250 million. It's just like the guy from the Angels, Hamilton.
Yeah,
they released him the other day. They owe him $30 million next year.
Yeah, and he's not going to be on the field.
They got to pay it.
Yeah.
And he won't even be on the field. Not this year, but the last couple of years, the 2 highest paid outfielders for the New York Mets weren't even on the team.
Very true.
They weren't even on the team. One of them was released, the other one was on another team. A-Rod, they got to pay him $28 million next year.
Yeah. I'm glad you touched on that. If you were commish for a day, besides what you just mentioned, what rule would you make or change in baseball?
Well, I don't think I could make any rules to change the way the salary's constructed, because the owners know what they're doing. They're all billionaires, and they got so much money they're not worried about. The owners can't trust each other about players. That's one of the problems you have. You could be an owner of a team, I could be an owner of a team, and we're going to say, see, this guy here's a free agent. We can't give him that kind of money. We just can't do it. It's going to ruin our business. But as soon as you say that, an owner on the West Coast will give him the money. They can't trust themselves because they got so much money. So I don't know what I'd change. I would change. I would not have the DH at the All-Star game ever. I don't think at the All-Star game that I want to see Jake Arrieta face Verlander in an All-Star game. I would just say have more players available that you can put good players in the lineup all the time.
Do you like?
That's one thing I would change. There's not too many changes. I sure the hell wouldn't change the collisions at home plate. I wouldn't have changed the collisions at second base. Brian, we started this game in 1869. First night game, 1935. Baseball has been pretty successful.
Very.
Now, you can't change the rules every time you think something happened to cause an injury. You watched Buster Posey get hurt a couple years ago.
Yeah.
His ankle got cut underneath his shin guard, and he didn't have the ball. So my advice to that is, if you don't have the ball, don't block the plate. Okay, or you're in trouble. It's just like in the 70 All-Star game when I had the collision with Ray Fosse. He had the plate blocked but didn't have the ball. And that's why we had a collision. I started to slide, but there was nowhere for me to slide. So what's the sense of sliding if you can't reach the plate?
Right.
Or we won a World Series, I think, in 1975 because we're down 3-0. There's a double play ball against Boston, and I hit Denny Doyle, and he threw the ball in the dugout. I broke up a double play. Now, if he makes a double play, the inning's over. They're ahead 3-0. He didn't make a double play. The next pitch, Bill Lee threw Tony Perez beneath his pitch, and he hit it over the Jimmy Fund and made the score 3-2. and got all the momentum on the Cincinnati Reds side, and we ended up winning Game 7. And that was the 4th or 5th inning. We're down 3-0.
Right.
And you score 2 runs simply because you break up a double play. Every play, Brian, is important in the game when you're trying to win it.
The American League won the All-Star game this season, and they get home field advantage in the World Series. Do you like that format?
I think it's worth something to see, because when I played, we played in 17 All-Star games. I did. And unlike today, this is the difference. I like it to mean something. But there again, when you say it means something, it only means something to a handful of teams.
Right.
Because you can name the teams that had players in that All-Star game that have no chance of going to the World Series. You know who they are. We don't have to mention them.
Right.
Okay? But when I played, we played strictly for league pride. If you had Hank Aaron on your show tomorrow, or Willie Mays, or Clemente, or McCovey, or Bench, they would all tell you the National League is better than the American League. If you had Al Kaline, if you had Mickey Mantle, if you had Yastrzemski, if you had guys like that, Jeter, they tell you the American League is a better league. Because I played my whole career in the National League. And I always thought that the All-Star game was the opportunity to show the world that the National League was superior to the American League. It's the only way you could do it, because the top teams in both leagues that go to the World Series every year are real good teams. But I thought back in the 60s and 70s and 80s that our expansion teams in the National League were better than the American League expansion teams. And another reason why I always thought our league was better, and I hope you understand this, is because we had more African-American players. And we had more African-American players because Montreal, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, St. Louis, Houston, San Francisco all had AstroTurfs. And when you have AstroTurfs, you need speed in the outfield. And that's why we had more African-American players, because they're good runners. We all know that.
Yeah.
And you need to cut those gaps off in those big ballparks with that AstroTurf.
Interesting. Yeah, the National League seemed like it was flooded with more talent through.
Well, and we just took the game very seriously. I can't imagine Willie Mays getting on a plane and flying from San Francisco to Philadelphia to New York and getting one at bat and leaving the game. Willie wanted to play the whole game.
Right.
When I made the All-Star teams, not as a starter, we weren't guaranteed we were going to get in. We wanted to. I could give you another illustration. In 1967, I made the All-Star team as an outfielder. Okay? I didn't get to play to the 14th inning. And then when I played second base. Wow. And the reason I didn't get to play to the 14th inning, because I was the only guy on the bench could catch if our catcher got hurt.
That's incredible.
But I would do anything to win the game, because we had the league pride. We were trying to show the world that because the only interleague play we got other than the All-Star game, Brian, was spring training.
Wow. Amazing. Like I said earlier, I'm a Detroit guy, and I love watching.
Yeah.
I love watching Miggy. Who's your favorite player to watch today?
Well, I think Mickey's. He's probably the best all-around hitter in baseball today. He's been the best hitter the last almost decade. I mean, the guy could really hit. Even though he was with Miami, he was a good hitter.
Right.
Altuve's a real good hitter today. The kid that plays second for Washington. We got a chance this year. Of having American League second baseman and National League second baseman both winning batting titles, which they're ahead today, and both being MVPs in the league. I don't know if that's ever happened or not, because second base is not usually a run producing position.
Right.
You get your run production from outfielders, from third basemen, and first basemen, and you usually get your defense from shortstops and second basemen and catchers. That's why the Big Red Machine was so good. We had potential MVP candidates at second base with Joe Morgan and behind the plate with Johnny Bench every year. That's why we were such a good team. other than Buster Posey, you can't name me another catcher that will either be in the top 20 for MVP balloting this year.
No, you're
and
right.
Other than Altuve and what's the second baseman name? Plays for the Mets, plays for Washington now. His name always is. I get away from the left-hand hitter that hit all the home runs in the playoffs last year. He's leading the league in hitting. He's probably first sight. Him or Brian or Rizzo are probably be MVP in the National League. So it's very hard for a second baseman to produce that batting champion level. I won 3 batting championships and never won one at second base. Matter of fact, I don't know if any second baseman won a batting title when I was playing. It usually was an outfielder.
With I don't know, A-Rod, I find it unfortunate that his career came to a screeching halt, and I honestly feel that
who'd you say?
Alex Rodriguez, A-Rod. I honestly feel he didn't get a chance to walk away on his own terms. I think the media and fans had a lot to do with that. How much of a role mentally does the media and fans play on you as a player?
Well, Alex has had a wonderful career. I mean, if you analyze Alex Rodriguez, he's one of my good buddies, by the way. I work for him on Fox. Alex is one of 3 players, Brian, in the history of baseball. 3 that have 2,000 runs scored and 2,000 RBIs. That's some really good statistics. It wasn't working out right for Alex. He wasn't getting the playing time. There's no way that if he played the whole month of September, he wouldn't have got 4 more home runs. But Alex can't play on Monday, then play again on Wednesday or Thursday. He's got to play Monday too. He's got to get some momentum.
Right.
And I didn't think that they handled him right. It's just like they released Alex Rodriguez with 5 weeks or 6 weeks to go, and they keep Teixeira in the lineup.
Right.
And he's hitting 197, and he's making over $20 million. And this is his last year. So I wouldn't be a bit surprised. I guess I'll be wrong about this, but I wouldn't be a bit surprised if Alex. I'm surprised Alex didn't go somewhere and finish off the season this year to some contender where he could get a lot of at bats. I thought Miami was going to get him because Giancarlo Stanton got hurt and they needed a right-hand hitter. Alex might fit in good down there.
I did see that, and there was even rumbling a little bit here. I'm closer to Tampa about bringing him in because they need a DH here in Tampa. And I think you're right. I think he does land a spot somewhere before the season's over. And I don't see why he couldn't play at least another season or two because he is chasing.
Well, Alex won't play just to chase records, but he has to. I think I'm right on this, and I hope I am. I think that Alex had a $5 million bonus in his contract if he got 700 home runs. So that might be another reason why the Yankees released him. They didn't want to give him $5 million more.
Makes sense.
You'd hate to think that, but if that's true, and I think it is in his contract, and he would get another $5 million, he got 714 home runs, which is Babe Ruth's total, or if he beat Babe Ruth's total. So, Alex is a good guy. He made no mistakes like the rest of us. He's had a wonderful career. Yes, I would vote for him for the Hall of Fame if I'm voting. And I say that for one reason only, Brian. It's just like I'd give Roger Clemens a vote for the Hall of Fame. I'm the type of guy, and I don't know what either one of them did. I'm not here to judge Alex Rodriguez or Roger Clemens.
Right.
But I am here to say I'm an American. I'm willing to give him a second chance.
That's awesome.
That's the only reason I say that.
The Cubs the other day hit 80 wins, first team to do it this season. They're sitting at 81. Is this their year? Can they finally get over the hump, get in the World Series, and win it?
Well, it's hard for me, Brian, even if I talk to you or if I talk to Bob Costas or if I talk to anybody. It's hard for me to pick the Cubs. When you haven't won since 1907, I have a hard time picking. Now, are we going to say the Cubs got the best team in baseball today? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they do. I take my hat off to them. Joe Maddon's done a wonderful job for the Cubs. Now, they had last year they won 97 games, so they had a good year last year. Now, are they going to be able to get through the playoffs as they play Washington or somebody? Well, it's a wait and see.
Right.
You know, they still are playing good now. They're beating up on a lot of bad teams. But the end result to be a good team is to win the playoffs and go to the World Series and win.
That's it.
Not just during the regular season. We know they got a good team. They're good. Yeah, they got a 14-game lead against the Cardinals. I mean, that's an insurmountable, a lead in a baseball pennant race.
Well, the shift.
So we'll see what happens. We'll see if the Cubs can withstand the pressure. They got good players. They got young players, but they got young players that haven't been through the mill yet. And don't forget, this is the same bunch of guys with just a couple changes that got swept by the Mets last year in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Swept 4 in a row.
Well, to shift gears on you here, I'm a big wrestling fan, and you've been in 3 different WrestleManias. I think that's pretty cool. How did you get involved in the WWE? How did that come about?
Well, I know Vince McMahon, and we just put the thing together with Kane. And I must say this, that I've been around wrestlers a lot, and from Vince McMahon on down. Okay, I've never met a wrestler who wasn't a great guy. They are all great guys.
Yes.
Whether it's Steve Austin or The Big Show or The Undertaker or Mom's Venus. I mean, every one of those guys are just great guys. And they're all in the back, and they're always together and having fun back there. And they take the injury situation real serious. You know, everybody's worried about it. And that stuff's real out there. That blood out there is real.
Yeah, it is.
Mean, it's not fake. Like some people say, well, they got capsules and no, that blood is real back there. And it's a show. It's entertainment. It's the greatest show on TV. And Vince McMahon has done a wonderful job. Stephanie, the son, Shane,
yeah.
They know how to, whoever writes the script, man, knows what the hell they're doing because they do a good job.
The choke slam from Kane, did you get a chance to practice that beforehand, or did you just go with it?
You're damn right you got to practice that.
I thought so.
And the choke slam was tougher than the pow driver, and I'll tell you why. Because when I did the choke slam, see what happens? He gets you around his neck, and when he goes down, you bend your legs, and when he goes up, you jump. You jump to make it look like you're really high in the air. And at that time, Kane had a bad wrist. He had a small cast on his wrist, and he couldn't pick me up as much. So I had to really help him as far as getting up in the air.
Posting. Yeah.
Now the other one, the pow driver, you got to practice that because you have to have your head above his knee, because his knee is the one hitting the mat.
Right.
And you got to have your head above his knee, or your head would hit the mat first. And you don't want that.
Definitely don't want
so you
that.
just tuck your head underneath his crotch, so to speak. That's a scary situation too.
I could imagine. I really could imagine. I handle Florida Pro Wrestling.
That's as close as my head's ever been to that area in my life.
Yeah. I'm the owner of Florida Pro Wrestling here. It's an independent company, and I know the ins and outs, so I know exactly what you're saying.
You're pretty lucky down there because I don't know why, but it just seems like we've had so many wrestlers, good wrestlers, come from the Tampa area.
Yeah, they do. A lot of them do.
Yeah.
A lot of the greats come from this area. The also in our area, we have the IMG Sporting Academy. It's in Bradenton, a really nice big sporting academy. I was just reading up and seeing that. Sorry about that. Seeing that you have Pete Rose Hit Academy coming up in later on this year in Texas. What's your involvement with that?
Yeah, Katy, Texas. It's called Pete Rose. It's called Hit King Baseball Academy. To be honest with you, Brian, and we've talked about this in the last 30 minutes or so, I'm just, I don't want to say fed up, but I'm just very disappointed how a lot of teams are playing the game of baseball today. And I think it's coming from no one's getting any instruction when they're younger. And our academy is going to be from 8 to 18. and we're going to have great instructors, and we're going to teach the proper way of playing the game. Because you teach these kids at 8, 9, 10, 11, when they get up in high school, ready for college, they know the proper way of playing. And it just seems like coaches just spend time with the star players and nobody else today. I even see a lot of mistakes when I watch the Little League World Series. Guys not catching balls, routine balls, or throwing to the wrong base, not being in position to field the right way. And they try to do a great job. I'm not taking anything away from them on that point. But, fundamentally sound baseball, Brian, the one thing you don't want, the one thing you can't have is on-the-job training at the big league level. It doesn't work. Fans don't want on-the-job training in the big leagues. You don't want to go to see the Tampa baseball team play and have guys out there making minor league or high school mistakes. It's not a good situation to have on-the-job training. You need your training before you get to the big leagues.
Great. Well, once again, we have legendary Pete Rose here on the Brian Gould Show, and want to get to the main part here for me, and that is to discuss, you've partnered up with my friends Brian and with FanDuel and Alan Ross, FanDuelAction.com, and Pete's Picks. That is a really awesome thing that you've got going on there. Can you tell us what...
Well, it makes it fun, Brian. I mean, it makes picking games, picking players... and you don't have to gamble on it. You can if you want. As you may not know, I think you probably do, baseball owns 10% of DraftKings, and the commissioner come right out and said it's not gambling. So they can't get mad at me for having my own fantasy site. And, it's FanDuelAction.com, and I'll pick 5 players every night. I may pick 5 teams. We may have the Super 10 when I'll pick 8 players and 2 pitchers. And you can play against my picks for prizes, and it's kind of fun. And what it does, I think, it creates a lot of interest for people that are picking. And what does that do? They'll watch more games.
Right.
So I'm trying to create more fans and make it fun because it's kind of my knowledge against your skill. That's what it boils down to. Because I have a lot of knowledge in the game of baseball, and because I'm on Fox. I watch the game every day. I watch a couple games every day, so you're probably not going to stump me on baseball players.
Doesn't sound like
there's a lot of new ones this year. So, if you have knowledge on teams, then you can try to pick against me.
And with FanDuel Action, you can go to FanDuelAction.com, and listeners, you can also, there's a direct link on my website, BrianGouldShow.com. Right now, there's a great promotion when you sign up. You're given a free $5 sign up.
Yeah, we'll give you $5 to make your first wager. So what have you got to lose? Getting on the internet and then downloading FanDuelAction.com.
And get to take on Pete Rose and his picks. And what I also like about the website is the breakdown on some of these games. You can do a first half and a second half, which isn't offered anywhere else.
Well, we have a lot of things that FanDuel and the other one don't have. And and another good thing we have is daily. When you get your football fantasy, you got to wait till Sunday,
right?
Or you got to wait till Saturday. We're going to have football too. We're actually putting together a horse racing situation.
I see that,
where you can pick 3 or 4 horses and try to beat me, but you can't pick the favorites. Because too many of these horse racing seminars they have there in Vegas. A guy will come and be a bad handicapper, but he'll get lucky and pick 150 to 1 shot.
And it happens.
And that'll win him the tournament. We didn't know a darn thing about picking horses, but he got lucky when he picked 150 to 1 shot. So, we're trying to eliminate that too.
Awesome.
But it's fun. It's fun when I sit and talk to Al every day, and when I give him my picks, we go over it. It takes about a half hour every day, and we have a pick 5 non-salary cup games, pick 10 non-salary cap games. We have first and second half contests, 5-inning baseball contests, horse matchups, Pete's Pitch, and salary cap with better player value. That's what we offer.
Yes.
And we're not trying to be FanDuel. We're not trying to be DraftKings. We're just trying to be the little guy. Giving the little guy an opportunity.
That's great. I see that salary and non-salary cap games. You cover everything, and that's great. Once again, we are on with legendary Pete Rose talking about FanDuel action, and I think it's great that you're involved in this, and I think it's going to do very, very well, and looking forward. I mean,
here's another thing. Here's another thing you have to understand. That I'm involved in it, but I can't bet with FanDuel action because I live in Nevada, and Nevada residents are not allowed to participate in fantasy sports, gambling type. Okay, so you're not gambling against me. I'm just putting my picks in, and you're picking against my picks.
There you go.
So I want people to understand that, so they don't think that, I'm betting on fantasy sports every day. Gotcha. I'm giving you guys the opportunity to not bet unless you want to, and if you do, I wish you luck.
Very nice. Well, Pete Rose, thank you so very much for being on the show and going through my gauntlet of questions today. It was an honor and a pleasure to have you on today. Thank you very, very much.
Well, the only question I can ask you is, you sure you had your tape turned on?
I hope so. Once again, legendary Pete Rose, thank you so much for calling in. After the break, guys, we'll talk some more fantasy sports. This is the Brian Gould Show.
Let me tell you something, Brian. When you get Brian Ross on